Hi, everyone. I'm just going to give another moment to let some more people funnel in, and then we can get started. All right. Welcome. My name is Carmen, and I am the training coordinator at the Temple Small Business Development Center. The Temple SBDC helps small businesses start and grow. We provide free one-on-one counseling and a variety of low to no cost webinars. We are proud to be a part of the nationally accredited network of SBDCs with over 1,000 centers across the United States. You have joined us today for pivoting to procurement, government contract types. A copy of today's PowerPoint and a link to the recording of this session will be sent out to all attendees. While all attendees have been muted, we encourage you to post any questions in the chat or Q&A. And now I will turn the floor over to Jen.
Hi, everyone. It's great to have everyone come out today, and it's an honor to have the opportunity to speak to you today. My name is Jennifer Tilden, and I am currently the head of government contracting for the United States Small Business Administration. I'm currently running Eastern Pennsylvania, that is the 40 eastern counties of Pennsylvania, basically takes State College and we're everything east of State College. I'm also running currently New Jersey and the state of Delaware. So if you're anywhere within any of those areas, if you have any questions about government contracting, you're coming to me. Isabel can make available my LinkedIn profile. The slides will also be available up there. So I'm going to be sharing my screen right now. So here we go. Is that correct, Isabel?
Yes, you're all good.
Okay. Last time we had a bit of a mess up there, so I wanted to double check. Okay. So we mentioned today that this is pivoting to procurement. This is actually our second class in this series. And today we're going to be talking about different government contract types. Not everyone is going to have an opportunity to see all of these types, even if they get involved with government contracting. So I just want to start off and tell you that even if you get deeply involved in government contracting, it may be that not all of these types will ever affect your business. So you may not have to worry about all of these, but it's always better to be informed and know what's out there. These are the main contract types that are covered under the Federal Acquisition Regulation. That's the FAR. That is the main federal government regulation that covers any agency that has to buy something. The FAR is the floor. Any agency who wants to can add additional rules on top of the FAR, making it more difficult to buy something, but everybody has to have at least that basic set of rules called the FAR. You see these. We're going to go into each one of these one by one. So the first one you see here is called an IDIQ. You may have heard these mentioned if you've ever gone to any sort of an industry day, if you've ever had the opportunity to see a matchmaking event. You may have been able to attend something like the Society of American Military Engineers has a post event down by the Philadelphia International Airport, but you may have run into at one point the phrase IDIQ. An IDIQ means an indefinite delivery, indefinite quantity contract. What does that mean to you, and what does that mean coming from me? What that really means, somewhat embarrassingly on the government side, is I know that I need stuff, but I have no idea how much, and I have no idea when. This is a somewhat, quite honestly, typical example of not great market research and not great understanding of the requirement by the customer. And I want to let you guys know that I am speaking as a contracting person, and contracting people in a lot of ways understand your pain as a vendor, because we deal with a lot of the same mistakes and crazy and frustration from customers that you do, because we get the same bad information, we get the same lack of specificity, we get the same bad data that you guys do. So an IDIQ is what happens to us when the customer does this. This is basically when the customer shows up at our door and says, well, we want it, but we have no idea when. We just know that someday we're going to want to buy this. What can I do with that? I mean, I was a lawyer and I can't even do anything with that legally. You can't write a contract based on, oh yeah, I want this, but I have no idea when. So this is how we kind of came to an agreement with companies. This is basically a, hey, we have you on retainer so that when we finally figure out when we're going to buy it, you're going to be the one that we buy it from. That's really what an IDIQ is. IDIQs are always over the simplified acquisition threshold. That's now $250,000. They always have a fixed time. You're not going to write an IDIQ that's going to say, for the next 20 years, we're going to buy all of our widgets from your company. It's always going to say something like, for the next 4 years, we're going to buy all our widgets from your company. It will always have a floor and a ceiling. I mentioned that the FAR is a floor and any other agency can add more and more and more floors over that, and more rules. Same way with the IDIQ. An IDIQ, if you win one, is going to tell you that it is going to be worth no less than, you're going to get at least $25,000 worth of widget orders, and you will get no more than $250,000 in widget orders. So you will get an idea of approximately how many of these we're going to need. But unfortunately, cost estimating, as I'm sure all of you know from the commercial market, is not always the customer's strong suit. So sometimes literally all we can do, particularly when we're trying to cost estimate or when we're trying to pin a customer down for 4 years out, sometimes the best thing we can do is say, yeah, we know so we need some, we know we need some for a while, and we know we really like you guys, but we don't know how many or when. And that's where we're going with the IDIQ. A requirements contract is similar, but a little different. A requirements contract basically says, as much of whatever it is that we're buying as we buy, we're going to buy from you. So, for example, if we are buying a ton of, I say widgets, but everyone always says widgets, and I hate widgets because no one ever knows what a widget is anyway. I'm going to go with something that I was surprisingly rather frequently buying when I was down at Aberdeen. I'm going to say mass spectrometers. Everyone loves them. They show up on NCIS all the time. I'm going to say, in this case, mass spectrometers. If you have the requirements contract for mass spectrometers, or to bring it down to human levels, if you have the requirements contract for ice cream cakes for the federal government, every single ice cream cake that the federal government bought, we would buy from you. to flip that over, there is something, and these are really rare. And so I don't want people thinking that these are out there and this is a great thing that you can catch. They're almost never found, but there is something out there that exists called an output contract. And an output contract says that every single thing that you make, we buy. This tends to be if you make some sort of absolutely amazing one-off, I hate to do this again, but widget, this absolutely neat thing that attaches the wing onto an aircraft or something like that. But it does exist the opposite, where instead of you say as many ice cream cakes as we need, you're going to sell us. Once in a while, there is something called an output contract where we say, as many of your items as we create, we're going to buy. So those actually go both directions. Requirements contracts, however, are far more likely than output contracts. Requirement contracts, you tend to see not infrequently with things like parts. BPAs. BPAs are actually pretty common. You see these a lot, particularly within places like the DoD. Obviously, I pulled up Linus for BPAs because everyone always remembers Linus with his blanket. BPAs are when a contracting officer, such as I was a contracting officer before, I am no longer a contracting officer. I am actually going to take a moment now before I get into BPAs to discuss contracting officers, because this will come up again at the end. Contracting officers are persons who are invested with the authority by the government of the United States to make purchases on behalf of the taxpayers of the United States with government funds. Only contracting officers can make purchases with federal funds. Nobody else can obligate federal money. Not President Biden, not General Petraeus, not congressmen, not congresswomen, not incredibly impressive, loud, screaming congresspeople, not anybody. You can be on a military base. I'm going to pick on Joint Base McGuire-Dix Lakehurst because it's pretty close to Philly and it's very large. If you have a contract on JBMDL and you're standing there and you're working, and a very loud, very angry person in a uniform with every star and stripe and medal and all of the mission ribbons and everything comes by and tells you paint that or pick it up or do anything, unfortunately, the answer is yes, sir, thank you, ma'am, but you cannot act on their order because the only person that can order you on a contract is a contracting officer. And I want to make sure that everyone knows that right now, because anything that happens under any of these types of contracts, the only person that can tell you to do anything under any of these contracts is a contracting officer. And if you decide to listen to somebody else, and even if it's in good faith, you could find yourself in a position that you're not going to get paid for what you did in good faith. And this is actually an exercise that they teach us as contracting officers in school. So this is a specific one that has come up. So I'm sorry, I just wanted to get that out because that is a very important point, and I think a lot of people don't learn about it. But back to blanket purchase agreement. A blanket purchase agreement is basically a basic method of filling things that we know that are going to come up over and over and over again. It's basically like setting up a charge account I hear that back in the old days, and they showed this on movies, you used to be able to set up basically a charge account with the store and just like walk in and say, hi, I'm taking all this stuff, charge it to my account and walk out. This is kind of like that back in the old days when they used to have a store account. An example of what we would use a blanket purchase agreement for would be something like, if a contractor knows that when I was stationed in Kosovo, we had a number of all-terrain vehicles that we used to take off base. And you have to be really careful in Kosovo because we have a lot of landmines. So we have to have off-road vehicles to avoid landmines. If you have off-road vehicles, you know that things like the suspension go all the time. You might have a blanket purchase agreement for car parts, knowing that you have to replace the suspension constantly. If you run a VA hospital, then you know that there are medical items that you have to buy constantly. You could have a blanket purchase agreement set up to buy. Unfortunately, you know that you may need certain items like bandages, you need leads, you need scalpels, whatever it is, you know, there are certain items that you know that you always need to run a hospital. You would set up a blanket purchase agreement to basically always buy those on account. Things that you would buy on quote unquote account, you can set up a blanket purchase agreement and do those. Remember when we talked about an IDIQ, I said that there was a floor and a ceiling set up for an IDIQ. BPAs aren't like that. They're a little more risky for you as a contractor because there's no, well, there's no ceiling or maximum, but there's also no floor. There is no minimum order here. So you are taking a bit of a risk if you put in a bid for a blanket purchase agreement, because depending on how much money you do put into your bid, there is a possibility that even if you win, that no one will ever place an order against this agreement. And I have received calls in the past from companies that said, I paid $20,000 for this bid and I won. And they never called me. And I'm 3 years in on this extremely expensive bid and I won and I haven't even gotten a single phone call. And unfortunately, my legal answer is, I'm very sorry, but they're entirely within their rights. By the same token, I've had companies that have called and said, I spent about 20 bucks on this bid and put it in. And because of what they happen to sell, since there's no ceiling on a very inexpensive bid, they can find themselves in a place of making millions and millions and millions of dollars. So if you're looking at something like a blanket purchase agreement, please feel free to call me, call in SBDC. There are ways that we can look and see approximately how much people in the past that held the same contract made. And we can see whether or not this is necessarily going to be a good buy if you want to chase it. There is also something really rare out there called a letter contract. And for those of you that I'm very sorry live down Philly, a lot of you, I'm not sorry you live down Philly, but a lot of you are no doubt aware that just a couple of weeks ago, we suddenly had a brand new river called the Vine Street Expressway. When you, oh, I see that we have some questions. How do we contact you for that support? Somebody, Isabel just put my LinkedIn profile right there, and all of my contact information is going to be on the last slide, so anyone can contact me anytime. You already paid for my services with your tax dollars, so don't worry about trying to figure out how to pay for me. You're not bothering me. You can always catch me. If I don't answer immediately, I will get back to you as soon as possible. So you see here the Vine Street Expressway, which unfortunately just became the Vine Street River. If you have something absolutely insane, like Hurricane Ida, which just once again flattened a fair amount of Louisiana, or Hurricane Ida, which just flattened a fair amount of Philadelphia. If you have something where you're literally dealing with life and property, there is a special type of contract called a letter contract. A letter contract basically gives contracting officers the ability to go into an area where it's really literally crazy and people are on the ground trying to put up barricades to stop the rushing water. And you can go in and say, here, please literally start putting up the bricks as people are diving into the water, and then go back in approximately 180 days and do the sit down, go through and write the actual contract. These are rare. They are extremely rare, actually. They really only occur in things like Ida, on the ground in places like Louisiana. You see them less infrequently in places like war zones. In war zones, we still see things like BagNet, where you still have people running around with actual physical bags of cash, because we are often running under something called contingency contracting, where the rules are slightly different because you may be being shot at, you may be under fire. But if you are literally dealing with something like life, health, and property, you do have this special ability to use a letter contract, which allows you to be on the ground. Obviously, you see this not infrequently in places like FEMA. You can be on the ground and write a contract right there. You don't have to go out for 30 days and wait for 3 companies to bid, because when the levee's literally broken, you can't wait for 30 days for 3 companies to come back and bid. And you can't wait for a contracting officer to sit down and look at the 3 bids and figure out who is the best value for the United States government. Obviously, in cases like that, we need to immediately have somebody that can get in there and get the levees fixed, who can get in there and get the water down. So in situations like that, particularly if you are in some sort of company like construction, or if you are in a type of company that might be mobilizing, then I would be happy to talk to you about what might be involved in a letter contract, particularly if you are the type of company that might be interested in mobilizing in a disaster. The last major type of contract out there is time and materials. Time and materials is what it sounds like, really. I mean, you basically do the work and you take your receipt and you go back to the contracting officer and you say, here are my receipts, and we pay you based on your receipts. It's your time and your materials. I'm not certain that I really need to be here to explain this to you. Y'all are smart. You can figure out what time materials are. This is increasingly rare. If you can find one, it's great. If you find one, please feel free to write to me. I'm happy to sit down with you offline and discuss it. But like I said, these are pretty rare and pretty self-explanatory. You basically just go back with your receipts. What you guys are probably far more interested in is contract payment types. How you get paid is usually what people really care about. And how you get paid in US government contracting is entirely based on the level of risk. If you happen to be able to be at last week's class, we talked a lot about risk management and how you could start looking at offsetting risk before you even took a contract, and how you could go about managing risk automatically. we base our pricing on how we manage risk. And you see here the different types of contracts we base on how risky it is, the perceived risk by the US government, on how risky it is to us versus how risky it is to you. Firm fixed price, for example, is going to be all the way over. We find that to be, that, for example, is very low contractor risk. Firm fixed price. I'm sorry, swap out what I just said. Firm fixed price is the highest vendor risk. Why is it the highest vendor risk? I apologize. I haven't been feeling entirely well today. I'm running a little behind. The highest vendor risk. Why is firm fixed price the highest vendor risk? Firm fixed price means, for me as the government, that I have a secret number in my hand. And that secret number is going to be my contract total. That secret number is something called an independent government cost estimate. I am going to try to get as close to that secret number as I can. And as you all, as small businesses, put in your bids, I am going to be trying to find the bid closest to that secret number in my back pocket. And whomever amongst you comes closest to that secret number in my back pocket, kind of sounds like some sort of one of those 1970s game shows, doesn't it? Whoever gets closest to the secret number in my back pocket without going over is the successful vendor. And as much as it sounds like I'm kidding and Bob Barker, that is in fact correct. Firm fixed price, from your standpoint as a vendor, requires extremely accurate cost estimating. It is the most common contract type. If you do the numbers correctly, it can be a great buy for you, because if you do the math correctly, then regardless of what you bid, if you do great cost estimating and you manage to come in below, then everything else is profit. Unfortunately, you can price yourself out really quickly. What you are seeing here is a picture of an absolutely beautiful item. You see all the stars, all the gorgeousness. You've probably never seen this before, although you may well have seen this before. This is actually the ceiling of Grand Central Station. Somebody spent all this money to make the ceiling of Grand Central Station look like this. It was probably a firm fixed price contract. You can also lose huge amounts of money by overbidding. So be very careful with firm fixed price, because whatever you bid is what you're going to get, regardless of whether you give us this or you give us the absolute base of what you bid, you're getting paid what you bid. The only exception to this, and I do want to sneak this in because sometimes people do get shot in the foot. If you have a firm fixed price contract and the government is the one that comes back and says, you know, instead of a plain white ceiling, I want a gorgeous ceiling with the entire zodiac and a Pegasus and a whole bunch of crown molding, and I want that ceiling to look like the ceiling of Grand Central Station. That is a wholly different item. If you ever have a firm fixed price contract and the government comes back with changes, please reach out to me, reach out to an SBDC, reach out to a PTAC, reach out to somebody, because in that case, you can get changes because it's the government that changed the game. But for you, regardless of if you give them gold or you give them what they asked for, you're still getting the same amount of money. Next, the second type you're going to see is something called cost plus incentive fee. Cost plus incentive fee is basically going to be, you get the costs that you incurred, which will be discussed prior, and that's going to be laid out in the solicitation. And then you are also going to get an incentive fee, which will again be discussed up front. And that incentive fee is going to try to get you to make special attempts to make cuts in, and they're going to tell you, they'll tell you in the original solicitation. The contracting officer or the customer desperately needs something to be incentivized. So in some cases, the customer may be on a really short time suspense. So in that case, they may tell you that they'll give you a 5% fee if you can do it in 30 days. Or they may tell you that for a higher performance that you can get a particular fee. But they will always have to tell you within the solicitation what the rules are and what the fee is. Everything has to be told to you up front so that you understand both what the game is, what the rules are, and what you can win. We always have to be forthright with these things. If you don't understand up front what the rules are, then contact me and or contact the contracting officer. It will always tell you within the solicitation how to contact the contracting officer. Is the procurement process for municipal and state government similar to federal? Yes, by and large, although I'm always happy to get anyone in touch with a different government if they're interested. I don't necessarily know the person, but I can certainly find you the site. The PowerPoint and the recording are available. Yes, we can certainly get you the link. Why do I have gritty here? The point of gritty here is the incentive. Imagine that the cost plus incentive fee is basically somebody dropping you in a dark room and all you hear is Gritty with a t-shirt gun saying, run. We desperately want you to get out in front and get fast and get on your feet and get your very best people on something. And it's really only one thing in cost plus incentive fee. We have one particular thing that's really desperately important, and it's very frequently in this case, something like delivery. A lot of times this is a short suspense thing where we're looking in any federal government procurement, one of the items that we are looking at has to be cost. By law, one of the, one of the main points that we have to look at in terms of trade-offs has to be cost, but in the case of cost plus incentive fee, very frequently the one is delivered. Next, cost plus fixed fee. In cost plus fixed fee, once again, we're dealing with a contract where, like time and materials, we're not looking at a fixed price contract. This isn't a situation like I was talking about before, where regardless of how much you have out of pocket, you're only getting that amount. In cost type contracts, we're actually looking at your outlay of money. These almost never occur, just to be upfront. You almost never see a cost type contract if you sell supplies. We're really talking about, in these cases, people that have service type contracts. So if you provide a service, we're more than likely discussing a contract that you would be going after. But we are here discussing a contract where you are going to provide receipts and you will receive back your costs plus in some cases, and these are, again, increasingly rare. In some cases, you will get your costs plus a fixed fee. The fee, again, has to be stated upfront in the solicitation. That's going to be found on sam.gov. S is in Sierra, A is in Alpha, M is in Mike. A cost plus fixed fee contract is going to be used basically when, remember earlier when I said the government doesn't always know what we want, we just kind of have this vague idea. If we have something like an RDT&E, research development technology, we may give you a cost plus fixed fee. That basically says you get all your costs back, plus we're going to give you a little extra, hoping that you're going to get motivated, shall we say, to bring us the product. This is just kind of, in the cases of cost plus fixed fee contracts, it's basically that little extra cherry on the top of the contract that is the incentive to bring us your best. You know out there, it's the carrot, really. You know out there that there's a certain amount that you can get if you bring us your best. And again, you will know up front what you have to do to get this amount. That will all be laid out in front, and how much the amount is that is available to be gotten. This is in direct opposition to cost plus award fee. The first contract I ever worked on with the United States government was a cost plus award fee contract. It was the contract for support of all the bases throughout the Balkans region. Cost plus award fee contract basically says to a contractor, we have a problem and we want you to give us your best, most cost-effective solution. A cost plus award fee contract entirely exists to motivate contractor excellence. That sounds like absolute buzz speak, and I apologize, and that's disgusting. What it means for you guys is if you guys were here last week, you remember my sheet. And I said that sometimes we will go to you and we'll tell you, we need this lawn mowed and we need it at 1/4 inch and we want it done with a John Deere mower and we want it done every Wednesday during the summer months and it has to be done this way. Or sometimes we'll come to you and we'll say, we need the lawn done, but we want you to give us your best ideas on how to get it done. And the best idea how to get it done may in some situations be a sheet. That is an entirely legitimate way to get it done in some areas. Cost plus award fee is how we get that sheet answer. Cost plus award fee is really the government's way of trying to get the absolute best out of our best contractors. Usually you only see cost plus award fee contracts in some of the larger contracts because these are risky contracts. These tend to be really larger contracts, but the main idea here and what is different between these and every one of the other contracts that I've discussed is, and again, every single element has to be laid out in the solicitation the same way as every other one. But here, what happens is you get the base amount, you come back with your costs the same way that you did with all the others except for a fixed price. So you know you're getting reimbursed a certain amount. But then there is an award fee pool. There is a kettle of money out there that can be won. And there is a maximum percentage. And you go to what is called an award fee board. And the government sits down on one side of the room. And the contractor sits down at the other side of the room. And you sit down and you discuss each of the factors that are the factors that we rank the contractor on. And you get graded on all the factors. And how you are graded on each of the predetermined factors determines the portion of the award fee pool you receive. So after you go through this entire thing, you get X% of the award fee pool for that period. If you do well, you get a bunch of money. If you don't do well, you don't get very much money at all. So obviously you have a great incentive to do really well, which does well for you and your stockholders. And it does well for us because we get the best possible services for our customers and the taxpayer.
Oh, excuse me, Jen, sorry to interrupt. We have 2 questions in the chat right now.
Yep, I see the one I had said about the procurement process for municipal and state governments. Yes, it is extremely similar. I'm always happy to get information for people on different governments. I'm always happy to hook people up, but yes, most municipal and state governments have a slightly different set of rules like the FAR, but yes, it's almost exactly the same. When you're reviewing a contract agreement information, lots of CFR. Oh God, there are so many CFR references. What's an easy way to understand your info? Everybody should read those laws and regulations. How many people actually do? I would like to think that more people read those laws and obligations than people read, say, the iTunes agreement. I doubt that everybody reads them. That terrifies me. And it only partially terrifies me because I was a lawyer and because I was a contracting officer. It terrifies me because every single one of those things is something that you as a business are saying that you understand, even if you don't understand it. If everyone here that wants to get involved in federal contracting can do me a favor, just go on to SAM and grab a solicitation in something like what you do and just give a look at it. And like the person's asking, there's all this stuff in there about the CFR, the Code of Federal Regulations. And there are all these clauses in there from the FAR. And does anyone actually read it? And does anyone actually look at it? No, probably a lot of people don't, but I'm specifically asking everyone on here who is interested in getting involved in federal contracting, please pull one and look at all that stuff. And any questions you have, that is literally what I do for a living and what the great folks on here do for a living. So we're here to answer those questions and we can do it for free. So we are here to help you understand your obligations and what you're getting yourself into. That's literally why we're here. So I hope that helps the person that asked. So that's cost plus award fee. That's basically trying to get you reach for the brass ring by offering you a great big pot of money, which usually tends to get most people to reach for the great big brass ring. And here is Sad Joe. Sad Joe is here to remind you that, as I mentioned earlier, only a contracting officer can bind the government. This is at the bottom of my email. This is in every presentation I try to give, but I really want people to remember, because I've seen a lot of people get shot in the foot by this. Regardless of who walks through your federal contract, if you're working on joint base MDL, there are all sorts of generals and all sorts of folks that wander through, airmen. Regardless of how important the person is that walks through, they can be a general, they can be President Biden. They cannot tell you to change a contract that you have. They cannot tell you to change a contract that you formerly had or a contract that you're about to win. The only person that can change a contract is a contracting officer with a current warrant. However, remember, if the government changes a contract that you currently have, you may be eligible to get a change in funding, even if you had one of those firm fixed price contracts that I told you, no one can ever get more money. Well, if we were the ones that came back and told you, hey, you have to change this, you may actually be able to get more money. Again, I want to remind everyone, there are a lot of people out here who exist to help you learn how to do this and help you learn how to do this for free. By the same token, there are a whole lot of people out here who want to take advantage of you and help you learn how to do this for a whole lot of money and help you learn how to do this in a way that might not be entirely legal or ethical. I am available most of the time. If I am not around, my second is around. His name is Mr. George Tapia. We are out of King of Prussia, although we are currently teleworking. Here is our information, and we always have free information about all of the federal programs. As I had mentioned, I am not involved in the state or local programs, but I can always get you information about the people who are. And everything I say, everything I do, everything I have available is absolutely free. You've already paid for all of our services by paying your taxes, utilizing the federal government. So never worry about bothering me, never worry about how you're going to pay me, never worry about any of that. Never worry that it's a stupid question. I assure you, I went to law school. I've asked every stupid question that exists. You're never bothering me. It's nothing like that. Please feel free to reach out at any time. There are a bunch of other presentations available on my LinkedIn, including the one from last week and a bunch of others. And we have a bunch of other great classes coming up in the Pivoting for Procurement series, including one next week. And I am going to bop this out of stop share. And I wanted to also take the opportunity to wish a easy fast to those celebrating Yom Kippur. And I'm going to turn it back over to you, Isabel, for any questions anyone might have.
All right, thank you so much, Jen. As we are wrapping up here, any final questions that you guys have, you can obviously link in the chat. I'm also going to attach a 30-second survey about today's webinar. It's required by our funders at the SBA so that we can continue to offer these no-cost workshops. I can also link Jen's next session for next week if anyone wants to sign up. That is also all available on the PA SBDC website. So I'm going to link those, and then I think we are all set to wrap up here. Okay. Can we also send the links by email? Okay, so contact info, Jen, the best way to do that is through your LinkedIn, correct?
Or I'll put my email in the chat.
Perfect, yeah, sounds good. And then also as a reminder, we will be sending out both a PowerPoint and a recording to this session, so you guys can go back and refer to that as well. Okay, yeah, email will come out. It probably will be sent out around an hour after this session has ended. We just collect because we don't have the recording yet. So we collect the recording and then we send it out. And then final link for the next session. Registration is right there. All right. And I guess if we do not have any other questions, Jen, any final comments?
I don't think so.
All right, awesome. Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone. Have a great rest of your night and a great rest of your week. Bye-bye.
Thank you.